Hello, everybody. Welcome to EndoEmpower episode 5. I cannot believe it's episode 5 already. This time has flown by, but we are loving having the podcast. We hope you are gaining a lot of useful information or just feeling less alone with our podcast. I have some new faces with me today, so we're going to do introductions again. I am Liz, board president and patient advocate for Endo Forward Foundation. And then I have, who wants to go first?
I'm Haley. I am on the board of Endo Forward, and I'm a events director.
I'm Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm Delana, and I am also on the board, and I am doing fundraising.
Yay!
And I'm Yadi, your creative director and secretary.
Perfect. Well, today we're going to be talking about all things period products. And I know this might be a really uncomfortable topic for a lot of people listening. Periods are a taboo subject still in our society, but nothing related to endometriosis or women's health is TMI around here. And so although periods are not directly related to endometriosis, we definitely want to talk about this because it is something that impacts most of our community, and we want to make it less taboo and make sure that everybody feels really encouraged and not alone as you're working through your periods and utilizing products that are on the market. So I don't have a lot to add to this because I have been periodless for 4 years now. So I'm going to kind of sit back, and who wants to kick us off? I think Haley should.
Yes, I will. Oh,
Haley?
I remember being in middle school and being a middle school teacher, and I feel like I'm selling drugs out of my desk drawer because I keep pads and tampons in my drawer for the girls, because they're new, they're learning how to ask for those things, and they're shy about it. They don't want the boys to know. They don't it's such a normal thing, but they feel like they need to hide it because it's gross and nasty, and it's just a normal part of the day life. But the way I just open the drawer and they come around and grab what they need and then go to the bathroom, and I'm I feel like I'm selling drugs or something out of my because of the way they act when they need something.
Yeah, I think back to when I was in middle school, I I went to a very ghetto school or a school district. So you weren't allowed to take your backpack with you to the bathroom.
Oh no.
And so I was how do I discreetly grab my pad and put it in my pocket and make it to the restroom without being noticed?
Mm-hmm.
And it's you open your backpack and it's the crinkling sound, and then most girl jeans don't have front pockets, so you have to shove it in your back pocket, and it's even more crinkling sound, and everybody's turning around at that point, what's your deal, what do you have? And it's just I need to use the restroom. It was, I was I just want to take my backpack, but now I'm thinking back on it, I'm who cares? We just learned what this was in sex ed a couple months ago, so y'all know what I'm dealing with. Why am I hiding it?
Wait, y'all had sex ed in Austin? That is not something up here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area I ever had.
I don't know if they still do it, at least. I
I
mean,
had sex ed.
Really?
Yeah, I was at a private
So
school
did.
too, so it was very interesting. They had this lady come and she was jumping up and down and I don't remember anything but her jumping. I mean, I learned something obviously, but
no, so mine was a form got sent home. Your parent had to sign it saying that they were okay with you learning. If not, they would send you to another classroom during that time.
Oh,
And it
wow.
was just stuff from a textbook, and it was just read this, and that was it. There was not any I don't remember our teacher talking about it. I just remember her giving us the textbook and saying read all about it.
Well, maybe something
Yeah,
changed
that's
during
pretty
the time.
much how ours was.
Oh, go ahead.
Ours was like we had to get our parents to sign, and then the boys went in the gym, and the girls had to go in a classroom, and the girls had to watch like all sorts of videos and stuff, and then they gave the guys like deodorant and like snacks, and they got to play in the gym, and then we had to watch like videos and like understand a bunch of stuff and learn about birth control, and like the guys played in the gym.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Sounds about right though.
Yeah.
But
That
I
is
also feel like no one teaches like you can use different products depending on like where you're at in your cycle, like what you're if you're hurting that day or not. Like I know for me, like I'll sleep in like a pad, and if I'm not hurting during the day, like I'll use a tampon. And I feel like that, like, oh, you can use both, you can use multiple, like whatever you need is not like most people are like one or the other.
Yeah. I mean, even now, like, I feel like it wasn't until my late teens, if that, where I started hearing about like the menstrual cups. And I was like, wait a minute, like how long has this been? I don't know. I still don't know how long that had been a thing for up to this point. But like for me coming from like a Hispanic household, tampons were kind of like shameful in a way. Like you're a child that you should not be putting anything up your parts. You're gonna use a pad. And so like it wasn't until I was like 16, 17 where I was like, that I don't understand the shame behind a tampon. Because like every other girl I knew used them. So it was like, why is there that shame behind a tampon?
There was multiple girls that I went to school with even that were completely convinced. They were like, I will not be pure anymore, and like I will no longer, like, I'm losing my virginity if I use a tampon. Like they were that upset because they were like, that's what the church told them, and like that's how it had been drilled into their head. So I think that's such a like a maybe like a cultural thing, whether like church wise or just like growing up, like because they were really concerned that that was a problem if they did use tampons.
Wow.
Yeah, that's I mean, as a kid I get it, or because like, you believe anything like adults tell you. But like as you get older, you just look back at it and you're like, none of this made sense. Like, why couldn't I just use whatever I was comfortable with?
Have you seen that there's like that TikTok floating around and the wife sends the husband to get pads with wings and she's talking about
Yes.
the panties that like or the pads that like have the wings that like clip and he comes home with like a box of pads
Wings?
and chicken wings.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so funny to me. Because like who knows? Like maybe he doesn't have sisters and like genuinely had no clue what she really was talking about.
But also I think like guys are just that oblivious to it and like you said, like you remember in middle school like hearing the crinkle of the paper, like knowing middle school boys, like they probably thought you had a snack.
Yeah.
Like they had nothing, their mind probably didn't even go there. And so it's
Do you notice like if the boys in your class notice what your product deals are going on?
no, like they really don't, like the boys don't care. I have a couple boys who like have caught on and they like are a lot nicer to the girls. Like if they
Aw.
like think like they turn out to be like really sweet about it. But the girls are just still like, this is so gross. Like I don't know what, you know, and I don't know.
One of
Yeah.
the things that I keep thinking every time you keep bringing up like that periods are gross or that kind of thing is that I used to bleed through all the time and I would wake up in like puddles of blood or my sheets would be stained or, and like period blood doesn't really come out of sheets. And so then your sheets are forever stained and you have friends coming over, you have, your brother walking in the room and your sheets are stained. And it's like this very embarrassing, like gross aspect, right? You just feel disgusting for it. But one of the things I had emailed out right before we started the podcast was a reminder that period products just recently, within the last couple of months, started being tested with real period blood. And it's insane to me that as a culture, we think it's so gross that we're like bleeding through our products, or, I would walk down the hall and I'd be like, check me. And, we would all check each other, right? Because you're like, did I bleed through? Because I used to bleed through a lot. My periods were really heavy. And it's because they never tested any of these products with the actual blood that it was holding. They tested it with saline, like red dyed saline. That's just insane to me.
Yeah, and I think like for me, like I had to come to terms with periods aren't gross. They're a natural thing that happens. Like, and you're right, like they haven't been tested up until recently with real period blood. So the fact, there are days on my cycle where I'm wearing a tampon and a pad just to get through the night.
Yeah.
And like that's okay.
Yeah.
This might be controversial. I do think it's gross, but not in the like we shouldn't talk about it way. I just think it makes me feel so gross having to deal with all of that down there during the time of month, or like even when you have like breakthrough bleeding or whatever it is. Like I was like, I don't like doing bodily fluids. So I'm like, I do think it's gross, but not in like the we shouldn't talk about it way. Just in a I'll talk about it, but I don't like dealing with it kind of way.
I feel that. I can definitely understand that.
I think there's such a stigma around it too. Like even now I find myself like hiding tampons, going to the bathroom and being embarrassed about it. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm 23 years old. Like, what am I doing? Like, I don't care. It's fine. Like, I think there's just such a stigma around it, and you grow up and you feel that way, and you still have to remind yourself even when you're an adult and you're like, okay, this is not a thing. Like people just made me believe that it was, and it's not.
Yeah. Well, especially so I grew up with 3 brothers, older brothers. And so like I remember the day I got my period, it was just me and my oldest brother at home. And I was like, what I don't want to tell him like I grew up, like this is girl stuff, like this is between me and my mom. And I'm like, my mom wasn't home. So I like called her in the bathroom. I was like, what do I do? She's like, go to my bathroom. I have stuff under the sink. And I was like, okay. So like I awkwardly waddle to her bathroom, and then I still awkwardly waddle out because I have this pad in my pants now that I've never had there before. And I was like thinking, I'm like, my brother was old enough to know what a period was. Like, not that I wanted him to hold my hand in the bathroom, but like comfort me afterwards and be like, here's a piece of chocolate or something. But like, it's just, I don't understand why that stigma exists to begin with, because it's not like periods are new or have been around for like 30 years. It's been way longer than that. So I don't get why.
I think it's just because like our generation of moms and grandmothers and even aunts, like that was a very taboo subject. You do not talk about that outside of between you and another female. And our generation is changing that. We're being more open, we're talking about it. And I think that totally relates to any kind of health issue that has to do with reproductive organs. It's just not something that society is ready to hear. And I think that's why we get turned down so often as an organization for endometriosis. Like it's body parts that people do not want to talk about. And we're really changing that as, every generation gets older and starts having periods. Like we're being more open about it. We're talking about it, and it's important.
Yeah, well, have you seen, I can't ever remember, like, I've been trying to find her again and she has not popped up on my feed anymore, but she posts like things maybe your mom didn't teach you.
Oh yeah.
And it'll be like things related to periods, or like what to do, or like how to shower when you have your period and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And I'm like, you know, a lot of that we don't like, I mean, at least my mom never was like specifically like, oh, here's a step by step on what to do in these situations. Like it's kind of like a learn as you go and figure it out for yourself.
Mhm.
But I'm so glad that there is someone like that out there that's trying to help with those people who didn't have like that guidance at all, or you know, and the no, like have only males around or something like that.
Well, my mom, like, she'll talk about like her mom and how her mom like didn't teach her anything. So like she started her period and like had to figure it out herself. I was like, there's no way. Like, how as a mom do you just like not teach your daughter about this stuff? And then my best friend in elementary school and middle school started her period at her house. And like her mom hadn't talked to her about what a period was. She thought she was dying at my house
Oh,
growing up. And so my mom taught her, like, this is how you put a pad in. Like, this is kind of what you do. Like, which is just like blows my mind because my mom was so open about it all. Like, from all things like woman, everything was very open about it. And so it's interesting that like there are moms out there who just like don't teach their daughters about periods.
my mom
And
didn't
even
teach
like that
me.
older.
Mm-mm.
Like anything, like
No,
or
my mom had had a hysterectomy when she was 20, let me calculate this, 20, uh, 26 years old. And so by the time I started having periods, she had been so far removed from it for so many years. She didn't remember. And so talk about awkward. She called a family friend to take me shopping for period products. Here I am, like a 13-year-old going to the store with a family friend, and awkward.
oh my gosh.
Awkward.
But then like how do you choose? Like there's so many.
Mhm.
Like have you ever walked down and then there's so many different brands and like
Yeah.
how do you pick? There's some with charcoal in them, there's some with not. Like what
Yeah.
do
I
you
was
as a
just
13-year-old, what do
thinking
you
that.
pick?
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially like now, like I think as people are trying to be more like sustainable and whatnot, like there's like the ones that are organic or the ones that are this free or free of this. And there's like so many things that it's just something that my I won't wade through, I guess. Like I I don't know, just I just need something, okay. And then I feel like most of those options, at least the ones I've tried, are like if I grabbed a piece of paper and folded it and shoved it in my underwear. Like they're so uncomfortable and thick and crinkly, and I just it's like I hate trying new ones.
Well, and then like within tampons, you have like your light, your regular, and your heavy. And then with pads, you have like your daytimes, you have your night times, you have like your maxis, you have your like panty liners. Like it's how do you pick? How do you
Ones
and
with
then
chicken wings, ones without chicken wings.
exactly. And then like growing up for me, like it was like pads or tampons, like that narrowed it down. Well, now they have like the cups and they have the pad underwear things. Like, how do you pick?
Liz, I feel like you've talked about the underwear before.
Yeah. So I found out that tampons and like pads are actually really dangerous for us. They're all bleached. And so, I mean, if you just think about, you don't want bleach on your skin when you're cleaning a bathroom, so we wear gloves. And so it just kind of dawned on me one day and I was like, well, if I'm not going to touch bleach with my hands, why would I ever put it on my vagina or put it inside of my vagina? Like that tissue is so sensitive and absorbs everything that I kind of just went down a rabbit hole right before I'd had a hysterectomy and started researching like what are these products doing to me? And I'm really big into endocrine disruptors. So I know it's a taboo subject, and I know especially within the endo community, like a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but there are so many things in all of our products that we put on very absorbent, sensitive parts of our skin, like deodorant, lotions, perfumes, period products that are completely disrupting what our hormones are supposed to be doing. And it's, mimicking estrogen. And right after I had had my hysterectomy, it kind of dawned on me and I was like, well, I know I didn't cause my endo, but was I maybe triggering more pain than I might have had? Or, sometimes I still linger and I think like, could I have taken some of this out and maybe not have had such heavy periods or such, awful periods? I don't know what the answer is to that at the end of the day. You didn't cause your endo. Let me just put that disclaimer. But I've removed everything from our home. I don't use lotions, candles, scented deodorants. I don't like none of that exists in our home. If you come to my house, it's going to smell like nothing because I don't do perfumes. And so I threw away all the tampons, all the pads, all the panty liners, and I went to period product underwear or period underwear. And I know people think it's so gross, but it's so easy. I mean, if you have a clot, you just dump it in the toilet. It's kind of gross, but I mean, you just deal with it. Otherwise, you just turn on the bathtub, rinse your undies out, throw them in the wash. They come out clean. Buy a couple of them, and you're removing a lot of that stuff from touching your skin. You also save a ton of money. Now that I've had a hysterectomy, I have found out because we put period products in our care baskets, but I found out that there's actually a lot of products out there like Rail and Honey Pot that remove all of that junk from their stuff. And I probably would have used one of those brands had I'd had the opportunity or known about it.
Okay, so I guess this is like a teach me
Yeah.
kind of thing. So in my head with the period underwear, it's like you use them,
Mm-hmm.
you rinse them,
Mm-hmm.
and do you keep them in like a separate basket, or do you just throw them with the rest of your dirty clothes, and at the end of the week or whatever, you just wash them all together?
Yeah, so you rinse them out until the water runs clear. So there's nothing left in it to like get mixed in with your clothes and the wash. And so you just wash them like normal. I would just throw them in the dirty clothes hamper and wash them as I needed them. Obviously, I do laundry like 2 times a week, so they were getting washed throughout the week. But yeah, you just have to be sure that you're rinsing them really well. And if you rinse them in the bathtub, I mean, it all goes down. Most of us pee in the shower anyway, so it's not like body fluids aren't winding up in the shower. So
See,
Okay, so
okay,
here,
that was my thought. Yeah.
yeah.
okay, so
Oh,
here's
sorry.
my question. For
Mhm.
those of us who have super heavy periods, like how does the like is there like extra padding in there? Like on the, like because when you say period under, I'm thinking like a pair of like my underwear from Soma that like has the little cotton pad and like that's it.
No, so there are, just like with tampons, there are sizes of underwear, I guess. So you have like your light flow days and your heavy flow days. And I will say that I never felt like I had like a bulk piece of tissue paper in my underwear all the time. Like it's very comfortable. It doesn't feel bulky. And I never leaked in those underwear ever, 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 ever. Now, if I had like a really heavy clot, because I clotted a lot, I would have big clots. Those can kind of get kind of tricky and you just need to go to the restroom. I mean, we all feel them coming out, right? And so you just go to the restroom and you dump it or like take a piece of tissue and get it off of your underwear. And that can probably cause some issues for people who have really big clots. But as far as like just a normal flow, I never leaked. And I used to have like really bad periods, but I needed a replacement. I mean, a box of tampons, I don't know what they are now. I haven't bought them in years, but I mean, you're talking what, like $15 for like a big box. And I would have very regularly like 30, 45-day periods, sometimes up to 60. That's a lot of money. And so I needed something more sustainable. No way. That was so expensive.
So what is it that like, obviously like a pad, the pad's absorbing, a tampon, the tampon's absorbing. Like, is there something else in it? Because I just think of regular underwear. Like my brain cannot comprehend regular underwear soaking
Yeah.
period blood.
It's been a
Is it
long
like,
time. I don't remember, but there is additional padding there. It just doesn't feel weird. I don't know.
It doesn't feel like there's just like
Mm-mm.
toilet paper wrapped around your
Mm-mm.
undies.
Nope. I mean, it is a little thicker, but
Mm.
no, I honestly don't remember what's in them to kind of hold that period blood. It's seriously been like 4 years at this point, but I love them. I always tell everybody about them. I'm like, hey, if you're still using tampons, go use period underwear. I think a Diva cup is very similar in that aspect where you have that having to deal with the blood or bodily fluids where you're having to dump it and rinse it and boil it. But I didn't want to mess with a cup. I have always had a very, very tight pelvic floor. And so to get anything up there to begin with was always like extremely painful. And I actually do want to talk about that in a second because I think a lot of people don't realize what the problem is. But I didn't want to have to worry about like boiling it or putting it in the microwave. Rinsing it in the tub felt, I don't know, more sanitary to me than messing with all of that. And I also didn't want to mess with it in public. Like if your cup gets full, you have to dump that in the toilet and then go rinse it in the sink and then put it back in. No, thank you. Not doing that in public. So
I feel like I'm clumsy enough that we're like in the worst like public setting, I'd like drop it or something
yes.
and like what now? Like
And
Looks
I
like
know like a
murder
lot
scene
of
in the bathroom.
I know a lot of people in our community like don't drink. But for those of us like who do and like go out on a Friday night or a Saturday night and are like having a blast, like can you imagine like one too many, glasses of wine in and you're like trying to handle this? Like I just can't trying to handle this cup in a bar full of crowded women in a bar bathroom.
in the
Yeah.
porta
Like don't
potty.
even have a door. It's like a sheet most of the time. I
I'm
couldn't.
also like terrified of toxic shock syndrome. And so the idea of having to handle a cup and then putting it back up my vagina in public, no, no way. I'm terrified of that.
Ugh. I just feel like I understand like wanting to be more sustainable, but I just feel like it's not very practical. Yes. Why does it sound weird?
Practical.
Practical.
Words.
It doesn't sound, it's not very practical for me at least.
Yeah.
Right? So of course it's like obviously up to every person, like what they use. I'm
Mhm.
like, I just want to know how you do it. Like, you just explained the underwear. I was like, I need someone who uses a cup to like
Yeah.
break it down for me.
Mhm. Maybe we're just thinking about it too much and like it's not as complicated as we make it seem.
Maybe.
If you use a cup, send us a DM because Yadi would love to know.
I
Yes.
also want to know.
There you go.
I was like, I need like detail. Like it sounds so wrong. I was like, but I need details. Like
But
I need to know.
they don't teach these things. And so
They
where else are you gonna get your information better than asking
don't. I
around?
know.
Yep.
That's true.
Okay, so Liz, why is it you said something about the pelvic floor and it being tight and like that's why.
Yeah, so a lot of people can't insert a tampon and they think that maybe their vagina is too small or there's something wrong with them. And it really just is your pelvic floor is too tight. Some of us are just prone to that. Or if you've been in a lot of pain, your pelvic floor can tighten up and it's kind of muscle memory, right? Like if your muscle stays tight for too long, like it's just going to remember that. And so you have to go deal with that situation. And so seeing a pelvic floor therapist is really, really, really vital if you can't insert a tampon. Everybody is capable of putting a tampon in. It's just a matter of fitting your body to be able to do that. I know somebody who they weren't able to put a tampon in well into their 20s. And it was to the point where they said like, oh, well, I'll never be able to get married or have a husband or have kids because I can't put in a tampon. And I was like, well, you should probably definitely go see a pelvic floor therapist because that's not normal. Don't ever let somebody tell you that that's normal. You definitely can get care for it and your life can be dramatically changed. So we're big advocates of pelvic floor therapy. I've been in pelvic floor therapy many of times. You just have to help your body out a little.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's like those conversations that people just aren't having or don't feel comfortable having. Like
Yeah.
go back 3 years for me, I cannot imagine having these conversations with people
Mhm.
the way I do now.
Yeah.
And it's because of, the specific, I guess, community that we are in.
Yep.
I was like, outside world of this, I'm trying to think of like I don't have a handful of people I can be like, hey, why can't you put your tampon in your vagina? That's
Amen.
it's not like coffee tea time talk kind of conversations.
Well, and then
Well,
outside of our community, I don't know anybody that's willing to try pelvic floor therapy. Like nobody in my family. I would call my mom after and she would say things like, "Oh, that's so weird. Like, aren't you super uncomfortable?" Because obviously pelvic floor therapy, a lot of it is internal work. But I think people fail to understand how much you can do externally or just with exercises. There definitely is a time and place for internal work, but if it makes you feel better and you stop having so much tension or, you're not throwing up from pain or you're able to enjoy sex or enjoy putting in a tampon, like tampons can be game changing. I didn't like pads. And so if you can't put in a tampon and that's how you go for a lot of your life and you don't like it or it's uncomfortable, like you should definitely go seek care. There's nothing weird about pelvic floor therapy, and no pelvic floor therapist I've ever been to has made me feel weird about it. They're all super easygoing and realize like the sensitivity of the situation and they work with you. If you don't want internal work, they won't do internal work. They'll work around that. So, yeah.
And I think people don't realize too, like your pelvic floor, like is holding like all of your body weight.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Like the way like your upper body and like your legs and like for women, like our center of balance is our pelvis.
Yeah.
And that's why like you see all those TikToks of like, oh, women can do this, but men can't. And it's because of where our center of gravity is. And so we hold a lot of our tension in like our pelvic floor. But then that also means that like if you're having pelvic floor issues, you could have back pain, you could have leg pain. Like it's gonna go to other spots in your body too.
Yeah, your hip is directly connected to your pelvic floor. And if you're having hip or low back pain, it could very much be your pelvic floor that pain is being generated from. And I think people just, get used to the pain or don't know how to treat it, or they've been to an ortho physical therapist and their pain never got better. You might try a pelvic floor PT, somebody who just does pelvic floor all day, every day. You'd be shocked at how quickly they might be able to pinpoint that pain.
That's actually exactly what happened to me. My ankle started hurting for no reason. Like I didn't twist it, I hadn't sprained it, like no injury to it.
Mm-hmm.
It was hurting so bad. And so I went to like an orthopedic PT and he was like, "Okay, like have you had any like major surgeries in like the past year?" And this was end of 22, so I had two
Yeah.
surgeries at that point. And I was like, "Yeah, I had two laparoscopic surgeries." And he's like, "Oh, well, you probably just have a lot of core instability. And that's like making your ankle hurt because you're like not distributing your weight the way you should be." And I was like, so I had just found out I had endo a couple months there before. I was like, it's causing this, it's causing this, it's causing this. Now my ankle hurts because of my endo. I was like, someone make it make sense because this isn't it. But then like I did PT with them and like it helped a bit, but then that's when I started going back to pelvic floor therapy. And I was like, "Hey, by the way, my ankle hurts." They said it's probably core instability. It's just like, yeah, it definitely is. So that's gone better as I've been doing my pelvic floor therapy. Crazy enough. That's my TED talk for today. Endo can affect your ankles too.
Well, and I think we forget like that, endo is a whole body disease, but it also like it comes in waves and it goes in waves. And there are days I know for me where like it's worse than days where I'm like, oh my gosh, I woke up today and I could conquer the world. But specifically like on my period, like I feel like there's more days I spend just, and I know when it's coming too, because it all starts and it's like a chain reaction. And so you want to be comfortable. You want to be comfortable in the products you're using. And I feel like we don't talk about like the comfort of the products enough in society.
Yeah, I would have never worded it that way because like no one really thinks like I think when people think, oh, she's on her period, she's gonna be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like regardless of anything, you're gonna be uncomfortable. So no, I feel like your period product is like the least thing that gets mentioned or talked about because it's just like what cramps and you're nauseous. Like that's the only thing people talk about as far as periods, I feel like.
So
But
one
you're
of the
already uncomfortable, so find a product that's going to be more comfortable so you're not even more uncomfortable. Like that's how kind of I think about it. Like you can find a period product that's comfortable for the most part. I mean, they're all kind of awkward to some degree, but if you can find a period product that's comfortable enough, then at least you're comfortable in your pain. Like I know for me, like even like the pants I wear on my period are different than the pants I wear every other day of the week.
Yeah. Just to put it into perspective, from George Mason University, the College of Public Health, they did a study and it says that the average menstruator will use more than 11,000 tampons or sanitary pads in their lifetime. I don't know about most of you, but I will own less than 11,000 shirts in my lifetime. And we spend so much time finding the comfiest shirts to wear. You should be definitely figuring out a period product that's comfortable when you're using over 11,000. And let's just add the taboo subject here that our community is probably using way more than that. I menstruated sometimes 30, 45 days literally in a row. I bled every single day. And so that number is probably way less than I used. Yeah.
I was about to say I would double that number for me. Like even when I use ultra tampons, like I bleed through them like 4 times a day. So I would double that number.
Yeah.
But even like the panties I wear on my period are my more comfortable, like broken in panties versus like, the
Your
hot
grandma,
ones that I wear on a date night, like they're
grandma
very
panties,
different.
Granny panties.
granny panties. No, there's no shame. I was like, I'm gonna be comfortable. So
Yeah.
I was gonna say something and I lost my train of thought.
Well, can you imagine like putting 11,000 items soaked in bleach on your skin? I mean, just think about that for a second. I know that period products are expensive and looking for things that are non-bleached or on the healthier version are going to be even more expensive. But I mean, long term, like what is that doing to our health? Like a lot of us are really worried about the birth control that we're putting in our body, but are we really talking about what is in the products that we're putting inside of our body too? I don't know.
I have a hard time with that though because I am conscious about that and I will go get like the more organic brands. But then, like I said, I have to get ultra tampons. Like majority of my period, like 5 days of it, I have to have an ultra tampon and I'm changing it so many times a day.
Yeah.
But the organic brands don't make ultra tampons. Like most of them only go to super and some of them go to super plus. But you're like hard up to find that. And so I do have to like get the bigger brand names to get an ultra tampon. So it's kind of like okay, I'm gonna have to buy this to get what I have to have, but then I'm giving up what I want to get out of this.
Yeah. That's crazy that they don't make them. You think they would make like the whole variety that everybody needs.
Yeah.
Maybe we should write them.
I will.
But
Wait,
also, like, they're so expensive. Like, if a man had a period and had to have a product, I can guarantee it would go down at least $2.
Look into
You
period
have to
panties.
have it.
Not even kidding. You will save so much money.
so I don't know what part of the world this is, but I was reading that during the lockdowns, like when the pandemic first started, they were closing off the feminine hygiene aisle because it was considered non-essential.
Whoa.
And that just, I'm like, who in their right mind would ever think that's not essential?
A man. That's my
I mean,
only
like,
like that's like literally the only answer because most women have periods. And so if like we all know like you can't just not have something
that one.
for cleanly's sake.
That's crazy.
That's insane.
You know,
And not,
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, not to like forget that we're still somewhere that they're like taxed, that we have to pay taxes.
They're not taxed anymore.
Are they not? Since when?
They passed
I
that.
didn't
I think
notice
it went
this.
into effect this year.
Oh, well, my brain is still in last year, so.
I mean, but it was 2024 before they did it.
I have three little brothers, and so, I always say, well, I'm the most expensive kid because of my pink tax. Like growing up having to buy all the period products and all the heating pads and heating blankets and heated mattress pads and whatever just to get through.
Yep.
Like, and like even like hair ties and everything that a girl's need to be
A girl.
a girl, it gets all taxed. And so it's, their sports cleats might have been a little bit more expensive, but long term, I don't know. Mhm.
This podcast is not going to air until April, but today I released some content on our social media that talked about how, well, it was a quote from Dr. Haberland to the effect of, women provide so much more to the world. We're not just baby makers. And in that post, I had talked about how, we struggle to get proper care, unless if we're bringing up a fertility issue and it has to do with us not being able to reproduce. And a lot of what we're talking about today just kind of takes me back to that post from this morning where, the pink tax, the lack of education, the, taboo subject around periods, how people view them as gross, or we don't talk about them, or we're not properly taught about our periods or our bodies, or what's in our products. But it is concerning once we get to the fertility side and we're infertile or we need to make a baby, then all of this all of a sudden matters. Our periods, how heavy they are, how long they are, that is all taken into account. But none of this matters for people who bleed until it's a fertility issue. And that's really frustrating.
When I think
I
about
told
like all the birthing centers they have now and like the relaxation, like what would it be like if going into, your gynecologist to get your well woman exam was like going into a birthing center? Like how would that change how we view periods, how we view like ourselves as women? I don't know.
What were you going to say, Delina?
And I told you guys when we were on our way back from Austin last weekend that like 9 times out of 10 when I'm talking to a guy and I'm like, oh yeah, like I have endometriosis, their first question is like, can you still have kids? It's not like, oh, like tell me more, or like whatever. It's just like, can you have kids?
Yeah.
And that's like always the number one concern. And even not just from guys, but even from older women in my life, or just, it's always like, are you still able to have kids? And it's never really about anything else. And that's just like, that just goes to show that that is everyone's number one concern and always will be. And it's so wild to me that it's even appropriate to ask somebody that. And it baffles me. It really does.
Yeah, there's a reel going around. I don't remember if it's on TikTok or Instagram, but a girl who was on a date with a guy secretly recorded him, and he was saying that women who are infertile, that's a red flag, and he would never date them. And that's just insane to me because we don't screen guys. We don't go to a date and say like, oh, is your semen count low? Like, how many times do people go into a fertility doctor and it's actually a male issue and it's not an egg issue? Like, it's a sperm issue, and males are not treated the same. And that's really frustrating.
Yeah. I also, like I told you also on the way back from Austin, I had that guy that he said like, what's going on with you? And I told him that I had to get my ovary taken out, and he told me that that was a red flag. And it's just like the things that people say to you, you're like, thank you, I know it's a red flag, that I can definitely control that I lost one of my ovaries. That's so nice of you.
That's absolutely ridiculous in more ways than I could possibly think. It's just because we had this conversation, when was it, Thursday night or Wednesday night, Liz? About like the whole, like everyone on our board at least are on different kind of paths or have made different decisions as far as like kids wanting them, not having them, or like having them. We're all in different like spaces, but we all understand like that struggle still of like just being seen as like someone that's going to carry a child.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I was like, there's just so much more to it. Like, you know, there's instances like where you lose your ovary. That's not something you can control. There's instances where, you know, you just don't want that for yourself. And that's perfectly fine too. Like,
Yeah, definitely. I think just like generally with a woman's body, like we are so objectified and we're, expected to have all of our parts and all of everything. I remember a friend went on a date with a female, and like at the first date, the first thing that came out of her mouth was, I only have one boob. And it was like, why do you feel the need to say that? And if you really think about it, she probably feels the need to say that because there's probably some guy that she got down the line with that she really wanted to be with, and he didn't like the fact that she only had one boob. Like, these are the most insane things that we have to think about. It's just mind-boggling. Like, no woman has ever set a cup on a first date table and slid it across and said, like, I need your sperm count. Like, do you have sperm that you can make a baby with me? No. Guys would get up and like walk out of the restaurant if we did that. But it's nothing for them to ask us the same question.
Well, I think
I
it goes
don't.
back. Sorry.
Go ahead, you could.
I think it goes back to like people literally forget that it takes two people to have a baby, or at least like an egg and a sperm to have a baby,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I said saying it takes two to tango.
yeah.
I don't even think that I want kids. Like, that's where I'm at. Like, it's just not something I want. But I find myself, which dating is awful in itself right now in the world. But then I find myself every time I start like dating someone or seeing someone, I'm like, do you want kids? Because I don't know that that's something I can give you. Not because I don't want to, but like I physically don't know if that's something I can give you. And I feel the need to like explain myself and apologize and be like, I only have one ovary and I have endometriosis, and like I just don't know that that's possible. If it was anything else, I'd just straight up be like, I don't want kids. But like I know that I probably can't, and then I feel like guilty about it, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I don't want kids. This is like, it's fine. Like, I don't want them, but I still feel bad and feel like I need to apologize and explain myself. And some guys are like, yeah, I don't like, I do want kids, and I don't know if I'm okay with that. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, why do I feel bad? Like, I don't want kids. It's fine.
Yeah.
But like there, that same judgment wouldn't be there for a guy saying that he doesn't want kids.
No,
Like if
definitely not.
yeah, like if a guy's like, oh, I don't want kids, they're like, okay, like, you know,
Mhm.
cool. And if it's like a girl saying, I don't want kids, they're like, why? Like,
Mhm.
you know, you should have that like motherly instinct and whatnot. And I'm like, I do want kids, but I'm like, I still understand. Like, Liz was like the first person I met, I think, that I could think of that I was like, I do not want kids. And like, I was like, huh, like, good for you. Like, I love that you're able to make that decision for yourself. Like, wow, I wish I could do something. Like, I need to make a big decision like that. But when it comes to, and I, you know, I'm gonna just start judging every single guy that says they don't want kids. Just because they do that with us, I'm gonna start doing it with guys.
Yeah, we went on a family reunion trip last spring. And the question came up like, oh, like when are you and your boyfriend gonna have kids? And I just like looked at them and I kind of blinked and I like watched like all my second and third cousins run across the field. And I remember looking at my uncle and just saying like, my fertility and or lack of fertility is none of your concern, and we're ready to tell you we're having a kid, we'll tell you. Like, and that was just like the end of story. And he was so caught off guard because I said that to him and it caused like all this family drama. And I was like our conversations about children are between the two of us. Like you are not a part of that conversation. And I think we forget that like we can set that boundary of saying like, this is not a conversation I want to have right now, but also like, this is not a decision you get to make for me.
Mm-hmm. You know, I do think that a lot of my ability to set boundaries around that had to do with my husband. Like he didn't want kids. I had always really wanted kids up until, I don't know, my mid-20s. And then I was like, no, I don't want kids. Like I love my life. I love to be able to just get up and go and do what I want to do. And I was always pressured by physicians to have 2 kids so that I could get care for my pain. And I've said this before, I would always ask them like, okay, you want me to just have 2 kids that I genuinely don't want? Like, what kind of life is that for them? I'm not going to be a good mom if I don't want them. Maybe my mind would change once my kids were here, but why risk that? Like, no one should be made to have kids or feel pressured to have kids. And like the societal thing of, we're here to be baby makers, like it just doesn't fly with me. I just think it's crazy. A lot of the millennial generation has a lot of trauma from having parents that were emotionally unavailable or physically not ready to have kids. And I just think that that was a very much generational thing handed down, that they were going to get married and have babies really quick and really early. I mean, I think when I was born, like the average age for a mom was 22, 23 years old. Now it's well into the 30s. And I think that there's very much a good reason for that. And it's because our generation grew up and we realized that you shouldn't be forced to have a baby and society shouldn't put that pressure on you until you're genuinely ready. And I think when you're in your 30s, you're more capable of making that decision. I think it's insane that people in their teens and 20s are pressured to have kids. Like, I don't know.
Well, and like, I feel like people also forget like, you can have children without giving birth to a child.
Exactly.
Like there's adoption, like there's all kinds of like different avenues out there. If you can't have a kid, but you want a kid, like there are other ways to get there.
Yeah.
And everybody's journey is going to be different and everyone's avenue is going to be different. And that's okay.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah, I mean, for a lot of people, especially within our community, like they can't stand the heavy periods or the pain that the periods bring, and they have their uteruses removed. And a lot of us suffer with adenomyosis, and the only cure to that is to have your uterus removed. And I will never forget how upset with me my dad was that I was having my uterus removed. And I think he just wanted grandkids his whole life. And he thought having 2 kids, he was definitely going to get that. And for me to have my uterus removed, it was finalizing that decision, but neglecting the fact that once I was having my uterus out, I had already made that decision years prior to not have kids. And that's part of the reason that I'd also put that in the post. Like, there's a lot of pressure put on us from our parents to make them grandparents, and that's not everybody's story. And so that pressure really should be removed, because for a lot of people, I know a lot of grandparents right now raising their grandkids because their kids were not ready to have kids or they genuinely didn't want them. And that's not a life for your grandchild. That's not what you want.
Yeah, especially like with you saying like, you can't just like dispose of them to have like having them
Mm-mm.
to like cure you or whatever the case may be. Because like when I first got diagnosed and I knew absolutely nothing about endo, I thought let's have a kid. Like, let's just pop one. And that was I think my like exact wording was like, let's pop one out, get my uterus, get everything taken out, and I don't have to deal with this anymore. You know, obviously later finding out that wasn't gonna cure my endo, but I was like so willing to just like
Mhm.
have a child if that meant I was one step closer to thinking I was like gonna be cured. I
Yeah.
was like, what was I thinking at 20? Like I was 21 still about having a child. Like, what kind of life would I have been able to provide if there was a doctor that would have convinced me to do so? Like,
Well,
yeah, I'll do it if I'll do it if you have a kid. I'm like, okay.
Well, and shame on doctors who tell women to get pregnant to fix their period pain. Like, shame on them because you're talking somebody into something, talking about a very painful situation. And if you're telling them, like, oh, well, if you have a baby, then your period pain's going to go away and it's going to cure your endo. Like, no, that should definitely be like under the malpractice area, like convincing somebody to bring another human being into this world to resolve such a painful situation. Like, no.
well, and then you're only gonna have like the non-pain for the 9, 10 months it takes that you are pregnant, and then it's just gonna come back when you start having periods again. So it's not really
Yeah. And it
a
can come back a
solution,
lot more
Band-Aid.
painful.
But that's like us saying those things as we become more educated on this illness. Like I said, go back to that time I knew nothing, and
Yeah.
I would have done anything at that point if it meant my pain would go away.
Yeah.
And like even then, like I knew I wanted to have kids, but like I said, I think about it now, I'm like, how stupid were you? Like, even if you wanted kids at that time, like you weren't in the like right mental space, let alone financial space. I was still trying to get through school, like bringing a child into this world and providing it with what?
I don't
And
think you're stupid. Shame on the doctors who put that idea in your head. I don't think that makes you stupid. I think that's a neglect of our medical society, our medical community.
yeah, I think it just goes to show how important it is, like, to get all the right information out there
Amen.
Well, and
because
just like the lack of education from period project products to like what it looks like to select the right period product to, you know, pregnancy and healing endo and like all like there's so much information out there, there's so much misinformation out there, and there's so little correct information out there.
Yep. Yep. Well, I think that's a good place for us to stop. Anybody have any last minute thoughts? Nope. Well, just remember that periods are, while still pretty taboo, they're not gross. It's absolutely normal. You shouldn't be ashamed of it. And society has definitely failed us on the way that we look at period products and look at periods, and even down to testing products. So if you have breakthrough bleeding, it's 110% not your fault or anything that you've done. But a lot of us on the board still have periods. And so if you are somebody who hasn't really had somebody to talk about it with, I think Haley and Yadi and Delana would be great resources to reach out to. So let us know if we can help you with that. And yeah, thanks for hanging with us. And we hope everybody has a good night.